my first guest, someone who are quite familiar with in this audience, and rightfully so, Dr. William Parker, CEO of Parker Maritime Technologies, someone who has led defense institutions and more, former naval commander as well. So, Bill, there's a lot on the table here with a meeting that begins just a little under 2 hours from now. And a little bit of the history, I believe, informs the people of America, as I've just done, that it's not written, and what was once thought to be written, as in Reagan, Gorbachev, was successful, and I say because it was not written as a script.
I agree with you. I also agree that the president has been very successful in negotiating, both in his private life as a businessman, but also in recent negotiations between countries, whether it's Israel and Hamas, or India and Pakistan, or Armenia and Azerbaijan, Thailand and Cambodia, Rwanda and Congo, Serbia and Kosovo, and the list goes on, Egypt and Ethiopia, and now here we are, Russia and Ukraine. And I think we forget, or a lot of folks forget, about the Budapest Memorandum that was signed by Bill Clinton, signed by the Ukrainians, signed by the Russians, signed by the UK, that said that if the Ukrainians gave up their nukes in order to consolidate where nukes were in the world, that we, the signatories, would ensure the safety and security of Ukraine. That clearly did not work during the administration of President Obama, when Crimea was lost and really no action was taken there, and it did not work during the administration of President Biden when Ukraine was attacked. So here we are, President Trump trying to find a way to negotiate this, and as you said so eloquently, doing it in a manner and in a location that is symbolic at Joint Base Elmendorf. So
one aspect. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
please,
Bill.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
One aspect of this that has been batted about, and by that I mean reported heavily since this was announced, especially in the foreign media. As you know, I like to watch Sky, BBC, NDTV, all of them, to get perspective, is that Trump and Putin meeting without Zelensky is some sort of dark meeting, concession, backroom deal. I want to posit that because Putin and Zelensky will not easily come to terms, or possibly we could see another version of what happened with Zelensky in the Oval Office with Trump and Vance and Rubio and others, just because of the tension, that Trump meeting with Putin is the necessary first step. What say you? I
agree. And as a matter of fact, President Trump has made it very clear that this is the first of what is hopefully at least 2 meetings and maybe more, and where Zelensky and Putin would be involved directly in meeting 2 and perhaps meeting 3, but that all depends on how meeting 1 goes. And so sometimes when the children are fighting, mom or dad needs to bring the children together individually first and say, behave yourself, and let's figure out how to act like adults instead of children. And I think that's what this meeting is all about, of where is it that Putin is willing to go? What does Putin really want? What does the rest of the world really want? What does Europe really want? And how do we get this together in such a way that Zelensky and Putin can sit down at the table and really sign the documents as opposed to negotiate, because they're so mad at each other for obvious reasons.
I mean, in a sense, this is a poker game with 2 men at the table, and not necessarily the cards sometimes that are on the table as they play, or in their hands, of course. On the items that are leverage in this, I always thank you for this, on or off air, or sometimes you may not even know, for helping us launch the DIME strategy and a much better understanding of how it is important to use the instruments of national power. But leverage on the table. We broke the Soviet Union economically. And in this case, Russia has a number of weak points. They have their strengths, but they have weak points economically. Things that could be done, if were necessary, by the U.S. and other partners could affect them. Things like the oil transfer payments and the SWIFT banking system. If that was cut off, then it would cause, while they would find other methods, it would affect not just the oil transfer payments, but their economy. And partial sanctions exist, but total sanctions could be debilitating, for example.
Well, these are two men that have a lot of experience. These are two men that, whether people like them or not, are intelligent. And I think these are two men that do not take kindly to threats. And so I think when you have Trump and Putin in the room, people might be surprised that they may be talking about where the similarities are as opposed to where the threat points or stress points are. And then I think you go back to the discussion that the United States and Russia actually have more similarities than we do differences. And we go back and discuss the fact that we're both predominantly Christian countries that are both feeling as stressor points of Muslim religions inside our countries and on the borders, that both of us have had bad times with drugs. Both of us have had bad times with dealing with Afghanistan, and both of us have had issues with China. And so I think when you look at all of those, there are some similarities in the discussions that need to be had, as well as the four areas that the Russians would like to maintain, in addition to Crimea. The fact that the Russians would like to maintain control of one of the largest nuclear power plants on the planet, and the largest in Europe, et cetera. So I think there are some economic stress points here. I think there are some geographic points that they both need to talk about. But I suspect there'll be a lot of discussion about similarities and how the two can work together as well.
What are some of those other points that – actually, let me rephrase this. What are some of the key points you think could bring us – you've mentioned a number of them – bring us closer together and at the same time possibly – work from a Zelensky point of view? Is there such a thing, for that matter?
Oh, I think there is. I think one of them is, hey, look, President Putin, you give this real estate back to Ukraine, reset the borders the way they were. I think Crimea will be a separate discussion. I'm not sure that one's going to ever go back, or at least not in the near term, go back to Ukraine, but it could happen, I guess. But I think in exchange for that, it's the economy, stupid, right? When we go back to Russia really needs to be selling their cheap oil, and President Putin needs to be able to travel around the globe without not worrying about being arrested, et cetera. And so I think these are things that are on the table, not only for their government, but also for his personal well-being and his ability to remain in office longer.
As far as opposition in Russia, and there is some opposition to Putin, is that in any way a factor, or is that a sideline issue?
I think it's a sideline issue. I think that Putin still has a strong control over his country, and I don't think that's going to change anytime in the near future. I think that there are folks that have tried to have him overthrown, trying to have him executed, et cetera, but I don't see that happening. I also think there's probably going to be some quiet discussions of internal pressures against both of them, and they might even talk about, again, their similarities there of people trying to remove both of them from office from internally from their countries. But this could turn out to be a huge win if done right. It could turn out to look like a huge win for both Russia and for Ukraine. And if that, in fact, can come to fruition, then in turn, Trump would again add to his list of countries that he has negotiated a peaceful talk.
My guest, Dr. William Parker, CEO of Parker Maritime Strategies, also the author of Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century. Couple of other things, and the last question, something similar to, is there a view or a thought on Zelensky's perspective right now? He's clearly positioning and his meeting with Keir Starmer, conversations, whether by phone or in person that he's had. And then if you look at Trump, he also had his call with UK, France, and Germany and possibly other EU leaders who were in on that.
I suspect from the Trump perspective that he has reached out and said, this is what I intend to do, but what are your thoughts on this? What do you think is non-negotiable in this whole issue? As far as Zelensky goes, he is the head of his country, and I don't think Trump hasn't pushed back on that. He's just said there needs to be a meeting before the Zelensky-Putin meeting, and that's what this is all about. So I think Zelensky will be teed up well if this meeting goes well. This meeting could be one where Putin just says, "Hey, I'm not negotiating. I'm not giving any real estate back." And if that's the case, I think it will be a long time before there'll be another meeting, or at least some period of time. And I think you will see increased sanctions, not just from the U.S., but from Europe as well. And that will be something that Putin will then be in a situation where he may not be able to recover from. And then he will get significant pressure from inside his country if their economy continues to plummet as it is right now.
Should the Europeans be kept away from the table at this point? They've indicated that if there was a trilateral meeting, they want to be at the table. Now, they do have an interest, obviously, with the geographic connection there and proximity. But should they be away from the table? Should there be a trilateral meeting?
Well, I certainly think that they have a lot of interest here, right? I mean, it's the breadbasket of the world. It's some of Europe. It's some of the largest energy production for Europe, not just the oil issues, but also nuclear power issues. So Europe has a lot of interest here, and they rightly should be asking the question and asking to be involved. And I think that Trump's calls have probably set it up in such a way that he is talking not just on behalf of the United States, but on behalf of all of NATO and the European Union. This is what we collectively require, and this is what will happen if you do not, come to the negotiation table in a way that is reasonable. I think that's the way this is going to move forward. And I think, again, it's the economy is a huge part of this.
I mentioned earlier on the flex by Sergei Lavrov with the USSR jersey as he showed up. The Arctic region, you and I have discussed for many years, and it was reported that both Russia and China had, deployed ships, or they were on their way into the Arctic region as we were coming into this summit. At the same time, the president has been clear that he's ordered new ships. There's a new cutter brought online for the Coast Guard. Is that tangential? What do you think?
Well, I think that's indicative of the fact that we do need a Navy and a military that is large enough and capable enough and well run. But I'll tell you one way you could really drive home a point that you're serious about operating in this region is to start building icebreakers again. And our icebreaker fleet is basically coming down to zero. And it makes you scratch your head. If you want to operate in that region of the world, you need to be building icebreakers. You need to at least be seriously talking about operating in that environment with icebreakers. The Russians and the Chinese build them and build them big and build them well, and we are not. And that's a mistake because it sends a message that we're not serious about operating in those regions, or at least not at sea. We're not serious about it if you're not building those kind of icebreakers. So to me, that is a message that has been lost so far, and we need to fix that.
Well, Bill, thank you for the time, my friend. A lot of information in there for discussion with the audience. The world's paying attention today. And let me correct myself, by the way, it's 11 a.m. Alaska Daylight Time, which is 3 p.m. RE time Eastern, that this bilateral meeting will take place. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Great talking to you again.
Always, my friend. 866-95-PATRIOT, 957-2874. And it is recommended reading, if you're a listener for this show, Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century. It was taught at the Naval Academy. It is taught at the Naval Academy, I believe, still, and more. But it is a course load on our national security, our platform. And Bill's been instrumental in helping to build that here on this show, and that's for you, the Patriot audience.